there, where instead of taking this off, you just do it like that. Again, greatly exaggerated. This might be 25 degrees, and then you add a 5-degree micro bevel there, and that means you can get back to work more quickly without taking all of this metal off. Eventually, when you go like this, you get to the point where you have to go back here and start over again and come in on the point here, and then you can start again with a little micro bevel. And I might as well show you micro bevel right off to give you a sense of where we're going this evening. Here's one. This is a Lee Nielsen Chisel. When I bought these 10, 15 years ago, they honed them at 25 degrees. I've since found out that A2 steel is not that happy at 25 degrees. It's happier at 30, which is good because that means I can do that micro bevel. And that's that little shiniest bit you see. There you go. See that? That is a micro bevel. And I've just started honing at 30 degrees, and that's very easy with a jig like this. And eventually that micro bevel will get bigger and bigger and bigger. When it's about 4 or 5 times that size, I'll set it to 32 degrees. And then eventually I'll have to regrind the bevel and restart the micro bevels. But this gives an exceptional edge. You can see on the other side, if zoom in again.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. If you zoom in again.
Okay.
This is what a back should look like. Actually, in the monitor, I see a lot of scratchy lines, but in point of fact, it's just about a mirror finish right there. You know, you can pick up something there, but I'm flashing light on there. This is very smooth. You start with the back and smooth it. That can be a lot of work. Even on this Lee Nielsen chisel, you can see some very, very small milling marks across here, and you've got to get through those. You've got to get deeper than those with a fairly rough medium of some kind, whether it's a stone or a sandpaper, whatever you do, and get that nice and smooth. And then you can work on the bevel. And with luck, you never have to go back to the back again. That's a one-time kind of thing. Back to here. Back bevel, micro bevel, and then I just put stropping with a question mark on the latest update of that, which I don't think you have. This is a strop. Well, there we go. It uses an aluminum oxide in wax compound that you put on leather or something, and then people will strop it a few times, sometimes even both ways. I don't do that. We have strops here. I think we have all kinds of stuff. Interested, then you can take one of the classes with Larry Wade and look at how they sharpen their carving tools, because they go into that. They're even more obsessive. Is that rude? I don't know. They care even more about how deadly sharp their stuff is. This is plenty sharp to me. I take it over here. I go like this. It makes a nice sound, and it leaves a glassy finish on it. So I'm happy with that, and that's as far as I want to get with things. Other things are not so good. Some of these chisels we have here in plain blades need some work, and so we'll get on with that. Scary sharp is a technique, and in the original document, that's a link, and it'll take you to, I think, to the Wikipedia page. Anyway, scary sharp is using sandpaper on some kind of medium. These plates are great. We have a long piece of glass here that you can put this sandpaper on. I think we have 150 grit, we have 180 grit, and it's it's sticky. So you just rip that off, put it on there, and that's really good for flattening plane bottoms and things like that. For the scary sharp method, they suggest using a piece of glass or float glass or plate glass, and you just spray water on and put wet and dry sandpaper on there, and it'll sort of stick. It actually tends to go up around the edges a little bit, and I have found when doing a chisel on there, you tend to dub the edge a little bit. You get a little bit of rounding here, and that's not so critical on the edges here. But if you dub this edge, the sharp edge, then you've got to get past that. You've got to grind or do something past that, because it's always going to be not absolutely as sharp as it can be, because it's not that final little bit of a straight line. It curves off a little bit like that. So but that's scary sharp, and that's about the cheapest way to get sharpening. We here use stones. A lot of people have used oil stones for a long time. Even, you know, Herculaneum and ancient sites in Rome and things like that are known for that. The Japanese water stones are even. They're natural and artificial. We use the artificial, so they're very even and they're very predictable and they're pretty easy to use. 1,000 grit stone like this will wear pretty quickly, like in one evening session, you know, 3 or 4 chisels or plane blades. What we do, we used to do this in the bathroom. We have the running water, but here we don't, so we just do it over here. Try to get rid of it. Yeah, I was hoping to show you that this one is already worn in the middle. I've been working on it, and it's going to need a little work with the diamond plate at the end of the evening. Yeah, you can't really see it, but it does have a little dip in the middle. If I could really smooth this out, it would probably show up. Yeah, it doesn't. But it could. Anyway, 1,000 grit will wear pretty quickly. The 8,000 grit is much slower. That doesn't wear very fast at all. And what we use for something where you have to go even rougher, coarser, then 1,000 grit is pretty good for shaping the bevel. And I was working on this plane blade here, and it's now to the point, oh, that's pretty good, where the bevel is just fine. It's at 25 degrees using this, and I guess I could show you that as long as we're doing it. With the stones, we bought 2 Lee Valley Mark II something honing jigs. One goes like this, and that's for plain blades. One goes like this. There's a little delay, cool. And that is for chisels and smaller plain blades. So that's what I'm here. What you do is set this on here. You're looking at the roller and you're looking at the ribs here. You put it on there, slide it on until it's going to fit. And then you, plain blade. Well, yeah, you set here the number, the angle, and that angle, 25, 30 or something. There are some extreme angles, but they really don't turn out very much. This one is the one that goes like this, and it would be for a plain blade, and I haven't actually pulled a plain blade. Well, here, pull one out. Okay, here's a plain blade. Somebody has written 50 degrees on. I don't know why. I'm not gonna hone it. Goes in there like that. You bring it up to here. You want it centered on the roller like this, and then you tighten these a little bit, little tight. And then you make sure that this is pressed against the edge of whatever you're honing, because that is what makes sure that you have a 90-degree edge across there. And then tighten that, loosen these again, hold that in place with your thumb like that, and tighten these. And then I tighten with this. It's great if you've got any arthritis in your hand, because it works and it doesn't trash the brass knobs on here. And then you take this off. And you're ready to hone. I'm not going to, well, it wouldn't matter because 50 is steeper, so I would only be hitting the edge here. But the one thing you have to be aware of with this particular jig is that there's a little knob over here with a little indentation on it. And when that is up, then it is set at the angle that it says on here. Where are we? Ah, okay. And that is a bevel angle. If you want the micro bevel, you turn this down 180 degrees until that's pointing down, and then that will be 2 degrees blunter, effectively, and that is what makes life easy for you. So I've already done it with this one, except this is the chisel jig that clamps this way, and it'll work with chisels, but it'll also work with these thinner plane blades. This is only 1 inch and something, so that's just fine. I've done the 25 degree. It's got a, if you go like this, you can feel the burr on the back. The back has already been flattened sometime in the past. This is up for the regular angle. Now I'm turning it down for the micro bevel. Put a little water on here. Don't put any water on there. And then move it all around the stone to even up the wear. You don't want to groove into the middle. And it doesn't take very much for this.
Then we got a question about those pliers that you use. Are those custom made, or can you buy those that way?
I got mine, which are sitting in there, from Lee Valley. These come from Stuart McDonald, which is a lutherie company, StuMac. And they're Japanese, and they're pretty standard, and they're inexpensive. Okay, I'm going to do just a little more. A dozen, overdoing it. A dozen strokes with this will really give you your first micro bevel if you have a good edge to start with. Yeah, I'm going to put it up here, and you can kind of come in and see. Okay, just way, maybe. There you go. Okay, that shows a little better, huh? Or against a dark edge. Right, so that's the micro bevel, just that little shiniest thing that wants to kill the pixels. You're done. You just take this out. You've got a burr on the back still, but the burr is smaller because you reduced the curve with the finer grit, the 8,000 stone, and then just a few swipes to take the burr off, and this is ready to go back in the plane and start to work. Although, let me remind people that what we do around here is oil it before we put it back in there. A plane blade like this or a chisel can rust in 3 minutes. Nothing, it's just nothing. You go away, you do something, you come back, and if it has no oil on it, then it's rusted. We use some of the oil that CJ has left for us, I think. Vegetable oils are good. Camellia oil is traditional in Japan. Lee Nielsen has gone back and forth. They sold camellia, then they went to jojoba as being more sustainable perhaps, and then I think they went back to camellia recently. Or you can use some other kind of oil, some petroleum-based oil, but some kind of oil, and that'll keep it from rusting, and then I'll pop it back in the plane, and it'll be ready to go. But that is very sharp. That's a good finish. Grinders and hand grinding. We have grinders over here. We hope to get a CVN wheel soon because these are very friable. They break apart, and that's how they expose a new surface, and that material is not good for your lungs, so we don't really like using it. CVN wheels do not grind. They maintain their shape, so you don't need to keep moving it in, and it's not putting all kinds of stuff into the atmosphere, so it's just a better idea all around. When you do that, you get a rounded bevel, and turners like a very soft bevel. They use an 8-inch wheel. People who want to just grind stuff and get rid of it quickly tend to prefer a 6-inch wheel because it gives you something you can feel very well. It's a sharper curve in a way. This one, I don't know. I can, oh yeah. Okay. There, you can see that it's got, there's the curve. You can see those curvy lines. So you grind it, you set the table on the grinder to whatever you want. In this case, this is my first set of chisels, in fact, and I keep these for pairing. I've moved from 25 to 30 on my Lee Nielsen chisels. For these, I keep them at 25. And in fact, I probably try to grind this at 24 so that when I use the jig and set it at 25, I get that micro bevel. And that's probably how I did this. However, if you don't have a jig or don't want to use a jig or want a freehand or something, all you have to do is put this on there, tilt it up until you feel it rock and stop. And then you're cutting across the rounded bevel part. And if you just draw it back to yourself with an 8,000 stone, you're going to get that same very, very shiny and very sharp micro bevel. And you take off the wire and oil it, and it's ready to go back in the rack or something. But that's how you can do it very, very quickly. Just a little bit by hand, filling by hand, or you can use a jig and get right back to work. I was going to say something about freehanding, and I think it's very admirable if you can freehand sharpen, and I think Garrett Hack does, and a lot of people do. It takes a lot longer to become competent, and we want people to get into the woodworking as quickly as possible. So that's why we've adopted this system. It's once you get used to them, it's very quick, it's repeatable, and it gives a sharp edge. So doing it by hand is great, but there are easier ways to do it. When you're doing that, see, I'm following my notes. Anything on a grinding wheel, it's good to use a Sharpie, and you can mark the bevel, and then you place it on the table like this and turn the wheel by hand, not on electrically, and you can see where the wheel is touching your bevel, and you want it right in the middle of the bevel. And that tells you that you've got the right angle, unless you're actually changing the angle or something, and you would need to mark that. But it's great to use a Sharpie to see exactly what you're doing on the metal. Diamond plates, many people use diamond plates. They're a little expensive. My own personal experience is not so good. It stopped working before I thought it should, and I wasn't too happy, so I stopped using them. The only one I have now is one of these, like this. These are great, and if you don't use it for flattening plain blades or plain bowls or something, then it'll stay effectively sharp forever, I think, my lifetime anyway. I use this just for flattening my Japanese stones, and that's why this one is here as well. You can turn the stone over and do it like this. I tend to do it like this and use the weight of the plate to press down. And it is easier in our setup if you take it into the bathroom and do it, because we have that wooden rack that sits on top of the sink. You have the flowing water, you can make it all clean and get rid of all the swarf and all the dirty stuff, and that works pretty well, really. But if you're interested in diamond stones, I know Matt and a few other people use them for sharpening, Bland. Yeah, so I would have to ask them. I have very little experience, except one bad experience 10 or 12 years ago, and now a good experience, but only for flattening these. We have a number of powered hones as well. We have and we have this Makita somebody just donated to us. I don't have much experience with those, and I can't really say anything except that they are here. If you want to learn to sharpen with them, then they're certainly available, and you can check them out. The workshop we were using for a while in community projects, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it seemed okay, especially for flattening chisel backs and stuff like that, which gets very boring if you have an old chisel and it's very pitted, like this one. This is a great chisel. It's a Witherby paring chisel that we got at that place in Westmoreland. But the back is all this area here is pitted. You got to get through that. It doesn't matter up here, but at close to the tip, you have to get there. And here you can maybe see another little problem. I've done it on the 1,000 stone. It's been sharpened before. I polished it in on the 8,000. Round off. That, or it's just not sharp. It's not bad. It should be really sharp and just move through wood, with hand pressure only, since you don't tend to hammer paring chisels. So that's going to need a little bit of work. Okay. The jigs versus freehand. I already talked about freehand honing. It's great if you can do it. It will take time to learn to do it well. What happens is people tend to freehand, and when you're doing that, you kind of lock your joints and move like this, or move your whole body or something, but you tend to get a rounded bevel over time, a rounded bevel. And I don't think we have any here like that because we haven't been doing it. So in order to get that sharp edge, you tend over time to raise it higher and higher and higher and higher till you're no longer where you want to be. And it's a little arbitrary. You know, you can do 25 degrees or 30 degrees or whatever, but if you're getting up to 35, 40, 45, then a chisel or even a plane blade is not going to work the same way and not the way you're used to. So that's the one problem with honing by hand. So we use these various jigs. The easiest one is probably this one. I think this might really be an Eclipse Jorgensen. Chisel Professional. I don't know. It'll hold a chisel. It'll hold, did I pull a plane blade out? I did. It'll hold a plane blade out. It just clamps it. And it's got a little curved surface here to help clamp a chisel. Obviously, it rolls on the wheel. The bevel goes down. You turn this like this. And then you try to figure out what the distance is. This is a board that I just made. And this is set up for the Nielsen version of this kind of jig. And they are just a little tiny bit different. You have to make your own. But it's really easy enough. You just mark it off. There are instructions in this book, and I should have said, we have sharpening instructions, a book that we keep right down here on the shelf, and it talks about all these things, and I'll try to keep it updated, but it should be helpful for anything you're doing. And one thing in there is a reprint from the Nielsen website, and it tells you how to make one. It's a little prettier. But what you're doing is setting this against here, and either upside down or right side up, probably the same. Might not be, you have to check your thing. You know, that gives you 30 degrees. Actually, this says for 30 degrees. And then you tighten it. And this one you have to actually tighten with a screwdriver if you want to keep it from moving. These are great screwdrivers, by the way. If you're going to, you need a big fat screwdriver to, like this, to get the same head, but then you're very far back from where you're working, and that's sort of awkward. So if you can find one of these at an estate sale or something, they're great. Unfortunately, Home Depot doesn't sell them anymore. So you've set this to 30 degrees, and then if you want to set a micro bevel, you add another little block of wood or something in there and set it on that, and that will give you the micro bevel. You go back to your stones, you hone like this, you do that and add the micro bevel, and then you have a chisel that is ready to go. This one is it's fine, just where we would like to have it. We have the Guild has one of these, this little one. No. Guild has one. The Guild has two. This is for plane blades. It works the same way, except it's on 2 rollers, which might be better in some cases, but it functionally the same. There's also the Richard Kell version, which is nicely made. Same deal. You put it in here and you set it where you want to go, and you just close this. This is mine, though. It's not the Guild's, and I don't need it anymore, so I don't use it anymore. One way you can do this is if you have a bevel, you can just look down like this and see that you're up a little bit. You know, you've got about a hair underneath the back of the bevel and the front is touching it, and that will give you the micro bevel. Or you can use one of these and set the angle. You know, you zero it here first, you get that and see where it is. And this is actually 30 degrees, which is not where I want it, but you know, you could you could use it there. So, you know, extend it and see where that'll take you, and that's 24.6, and that's really pretty close to where I'd want it. That's the bevel. I'd have to do something else to get a micro bevel on there, but that's how you can set both the bevel and a micro bevel with one of these Eclipse style jigs. The Lee Nielsen system is functionally the same, but it is expensive, and it is customized to their to all the tools they make. So it's got a nice cutout here to hold the chisels flat and plane blades flat, and this is their basic model. But then if you want to do other things, Spokeshave blades or something, then you need these jaws. These come on, it's all stainless steel, it's lovely, well made. You unscrew these, you put these on, and that'll do Spokeshaves and other things. And then if you want to do skewed tools like this one, you can see, well, okay. The blade is skewed. In this one, the blade is skewed. In order to get that right, in order to get it to work properly, that blade has to be perfectly honed. You know, it has to be just the right angle, whether it's one of these or one of those old 39 Stanley dado planes, something like that. You've got to get that perfect, and that's really hard to do by hand. People did it. Obviously, it can be done. I was having a hard time until I got one of these. I really couldn't make this particular plane work. They come in pairs, and there are some other things that use, I think, 18 degrees or 30-degree skews. It helps in doing a pairing chisel like this, although this chisel, I just ground freehand on there and then honed, as I said, like this. And that gives me a very sharp edge, because I want this this is much less than 25 degrees. I don't know what it is, 20 or something. But it's a very delicate edge, but it's really great for taking off little bits of wood. Yeah. Lee Valley. We use the Mark II honing guide. That's what we call it. Something I wanted to mention, that when you're using these here in the shop, a lot of it's brass, some of it's painted metal, but then there's an axle in here, and it does rust. So after you use this, you should clean it and put a little drop of oil on there, on both sides of that, and then wipe it down or something to keep it from rusting. There are some other jigs out there. Bridge City makes one. We have one around here that's a funny looking thing. It looks sort of like this with rails on it, and you put sandpaper on there and then clamp plane blades into it and run it like this. And there's one particular thing I thought it might be good for, but we haven't pulled it out, and we don't really use that very much. We don't use it at all, let's be honest. Chisels, I've already showed you a little bit, but they come in different sizes this way, and then the bevel angle matters to people. As I said, these were 25 degrees when I bought them. I've switched to 30 now because they're A2 steel. If I had, this would be a old steel, probably an 01 steel, and seems perfectly happy at 25 degrees.
What happened?
What happened? It matters. It's also a pairing chisel. If you're using, we have some. Mortising chisel. You're going to want something even rougher. This is 35 degrees, and it could even be 35 with a 5-degree micro bevel, because really you're just pounding through the wood, typically, and then levering it out. So if you had this at 25 degrees, you'd be breaking the tip off, within minutes, really. So you have to be aware of what your purpose is and what you're doing. And the way to start is to first know where you want to go, what bevel you want, and then we have this little bevel gauge. This is also Richard Kell. He does some nice work. And you just put the chisel in there. It's got the little circle so you don't break the tip. You hold it up here, and you see where we are. This is effectively 25. Yeah. So that's how you measure. That's how you measure the angle, and it has 20, 22 and a half, 25, 27 and a half, 30, 32, etc. So these are all the common sizes we use here, and that allows you to get your starting point and set this and see where you want to go. Few chisels we talked about. Plain blades we talked about. Steels, if somebody has a question, maybe I'll go on later, but we're running on as far as I wanted to, and I want to have time for questions. I'm prepared to talk about Spokeshaves and other tools if anybody's interested in how we sharpen those. You can do all of them, I think, in this shop now. We're really pretty well set up. But I might leave it right there.
Okay, so come on, if anybody has any questions, just unmute themselves and ask away.
Yes, if you have questions, unmute yourselves and please ask. Otherwise, I'll think you'll have fallen asleep.
How do you do spoke shaves?
Okay, it's going to take me a second. Level 51. Okay, this is something I did years ago. There are a couple of different ways to do spoke shaves. Number one, you can do them by hand. The blade is big enough, and if you cramp your fingers and go like that, you can do it, you know. And you can buy an aftermarket blade. This is a Veritas blade. It's it's a PMV11 steel, which I didn't talk about, but you know that's kind of boring. And so the back is perfectly flattened. It comes sharp, just a little micro bevel. It's ready to go. It's a wonderful tool. It cuts well, kind of a heavy cut, but that's because this is my heavy one. I have a finish. Oh, okay. Although I think the wood goes the other way, really. We have some outstanding spoke shaves here. This is a finish shave. It has a very, very tight mouth, wonderful blade. It won't take a big cut. It won't get through your work very quickly, but it's a joy to use. That's, you know, 0.003 of an inch or something. So you can do this by hand. You can use the Lee Nielsen sharpening jig that is appropriate for that, which would be 2 of these things mounted on there, and that holds it way out there like that. The other thing you can do, though, is make one of these little wooden things. And I made several because they're different. We have one here that I made a few years ago. This will hold your blade. This one clamps it with a couple of wing nuts, and then you just put it in a regular Eclipse style jig and hone it like that, and that holds the blade pretty tightly. There's another one that has 2 little metal pins that come up, and then that goes down. So this actually has the blade in its normal position. That is, you screw it down as if it were in a spoke shave itself, and you can do it by hand, or you can put it in one of these jigs. They have a there you go. You can see that there's a slight bevel here on the side, and that fits nicely in the jig like that. Actually, you could use Lee Nielsen thing for this, I guess. Why not? So then you would hone it like that and pull it back that 1/8 inch or whatever to get the micro bevel, and that'll give you a very sharp edge.
So you recommend the micro bevel instead of just doing the whole primary bevel?
It's much less work. Yes, absolutely. Until you can't. You know, you proceed with a micro bevel and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it moves back the edge of the chisel, and then eventually you have to redo it. But as I said, it took me 45 minutes to clean up this bevel, which had been rounded over. And then putting that micro bevel on took, as you saw, you know, 10, 20 strokes or something. So when it gets dull, I'll do that again for seconds and, you know, then a minute, and then eventually I'll have to go back and redo the bevel, but it's much faster. More questions?
Could you talk a little bit about scrapers?
Oh, you would ask. Okay, well, you're in luck. We just got this donation. Thank you very much. Yeah. Scrapers. You typically have to start with a lot of work on the face of the scraper. Where'd my scraper go? Where'd it go? Okay. So this face, you can see milling marks here too, and you need to flatten that. And the way I do it, the way I've finally gotten around doing, is getting a piece of wood like this, and put some double stick tape on there, so you're pressing on the outside edge. And then you run it on a stone like this, just working the edge. It's only the last quarter inch, half inch, third of an inch, something like that that matters. But you get both sides very fine. You know, 2 4,000 or 6 or 8,000 or something. It has to be very good. Then you put it in a vise and you file it to get a good clean metal, and you draw file it, and you can use a piece of wood with a file held in it like that. You can buy something like this, but I'm afraid this is mine. This is not the Guild's. This is kind of useful because it's from the Bevel, and it'll do 90 degrees to the file. It'll also do 45 degrees to the file, which is useful when you have a scraping plane, not just a handheld scraper. And then you just run this on here like this a few times until it's smooth. And or take a plain file and draw file. That gives a good thing. You can then stone that as well. But if you try to stone it on a Japanese stone like this one, you're going to wear a hole in it. So I would only use a real Arkansas stone or something like that to smooth that. Other people don't even do that. And I've read some who just file it and get going. When you want to get going, what you do is leave a little oil on it, and you consolidate the metal with with a burnisher like this. This is another patent burnisher, which allows you to set a specific angle, and it'll do the 45 and the 90, I think. Haven't used it in a while. Otherwise, you take something that is very strong. We have burnishers here. This one is carbide. You want something, you know, tougher than this steel here, and you oil it a little bit, maybe even clamp it, and consolidate the edge a few times like this, and then you put it back in the any kind of jig arrangement like that, and you start at 90 degrees, and you then gradually bring it down. You roll it over, if you can imagine that. You're going like this, and then you're going like this, and then you're going like this, and the burr is very slight. This has no burr. Some of we haven't really devoted much attention to the scrapers here. It's just a very slight burr that would then allow you to scrape wood and create shaving, cuttings really, or shavings rather than dust. You don't want dust. It should be creating a microplane blade effectively and doing something. I think we have some here.
Hey, Tim, can you give us some sense of how, when you're burnishing, how hard do you push? And how many passes are you making?
Try 3 or 4 straight, and then 3 or 4 at 3 degrees, and then 3 or 4 more at 5, 6, 7 degrees, and see how that goes. In the past, I've done it too far, so you can, you think, oh, I got a good strong blade there, but the bigger it is, the weaker it is. So that's not really where you want to go.
So how hard do you push the brush?
Pretty hard. It's metal.
Actually, you don't want to push it too hard.
Yeah, but
Hard enough.
I think experimentation. If somebody wants to come in on some Monday night, we can just work on the scraper until we get it down. I have a couple now that I'm happy with, and they don't need much work because I don't use them that often. They just stay good for a long time. And we have plenty of material to work with. We've got a lot of scrapers. Some of them absolutely untouched, I think. Well, but that's scrapers. Okay.
I have a question on the chat. Which of the honing jigs do you prefer?
I love the chisel one. This is just so fast and so easy to do chisels and small plane blades that I'm really happy with it. Plus, it has a very broad roller. So it's just very smooth. If I'm doing something that doesn't do very well, like all of these skewed blades, then the Lee Nielsen, although it makes you go, ooh, when you look at the price, because, you know, it's $100 for the thing itself. And then every pair of jaws is another $35 or something. But if you have an 18-degree skew blade, it's tough to do it by hand and get it right. And it's easy once you get one of these. So you eventually, you know, I've got 4 or 5 generations of sharpening things in that plastic box, probably. We also have a Japanese chisel here, but that's sort of the same, except, you know, they hollow the back, which means you have to move less material when you are flattening the back. And, you know, it's wonderful steel. They keep their edge. We only have a couple of very small ones, and I only have the one. They're great, but I don't have them or use them very much.
When you're using them, are there any difference in using the Japanese?
Well, they're meant to be hammered with a little Genu hammer and all that. No, they just, you know, they hold an edge really well. It's tough steel. They're great. They're just expensive. I thought they were expensive when I started out, and then eventually I got a set of Lee Nielsen, and I liked the balance on them this way. And then these that my father-in-law gave me 40 years ago. You know, they're Dutch, Nootgedacht, and they're Swedish steel, and they're pretty fine chisels. You know, they're good used like this or something. I don't like the balance when you're holding them like that, but they're pretty good. I should have those many more years, I guess.
And Steve Poland asked about draw knife sharpening.
Okay, that's another very specialized one. We have a work sharp. Draw sharp, and we have a draw knife. Things falling on the floor. We have 2. One way to do it is just to mount a stone in a board or something like this, where you can keep it like this and keep the handles free of what you're doing. But Peter Galway. Somebody developed this and sold it to somebody else who then produces them, and it's dead easy. The problem is, in the old days, you just took a stone like this. Here's a better one, presents a stone, and work like this and keep your fingers away, you know. And I think for a lot of uses, it was kind of a rough cut. It was taking off a tremendous amount of material. You wouldn't believe how much material it'll take off. You know, so really, really sharp perhaps didn't matter so much. But with this technique, you can do it pretty easily. The problem is, compared to this, is it's using this back edge as a reference surface. So a lot of times these old draw knives have been hammered on or something, and they're really kind of trash. This one was a mess, and I had to spend a lot of time sanding it, filing it first, and then sanding it smooth. Because this uses 2 grits of kind of sandpaper here, and I can't tell the difference. They used to be different colors, and now they're about the same. But it's got these pillars you register against, and these other 2 pillars with sandpaper on the face, and you get more sandpaper. And what you're doing is registering this against the pillar. Excuse me, it's me like this. There, so just the absolute tip of the blade is touching. And to get there, you move it. That is, you loosen this and move it in and out like this. So the back of this is resting on these plastic knobs here. And then you move this in until it's just touching. And you lock it, and you note it, because there's a series of numbers printed on here. We do it right side up. Series of numbers. One side is for the back, and one is for the bevel side. And you remember those numbers, or put them on a piece of tape and put them on your tool or something, or note them if you only have one. Doesn't matter if you got a couple. Then you want to keep them separate, because the back should be almost flat. You don't want to raise a back bevel on it. And you can see that's actually pretty good on this one. I can see a little bit back there. It is sort of a back bevel, and some Windsor chairmakers do prefer a back bevel, but you don't want to get too big because it's that same tendency to start out like this, and every time you hone it, you start going more like this and this and this and this until pretty soon it's like a screwdriver or something. So remember where it is, and you do the rougher sandpaper first and then the fine sandpaper on the back side, and then you go over here till it's barely touching there, and that's just about right. And this is at 53. That's my number for the bevel side. And the way he describes it is you hold it like this, and run it on here. So that your fingers are, stay away from the blade. And it doesn't take much. And you're looking at, this is another place where the Sharpie probably helped. You put Sharpie on the absolute tip there, and you want this to hit the Sharpie and take it off without getting on the bevel over here or farther down, because that doesn't do any good. You want it to be whatever angle you want and not keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger by having to get rid of it. And I think Curtis Buchanan talks about 37 degrees total combined as a good angle for a Spokeshave. And that would be like, this is flat plus 3 degrees or so. And then this would be, 34 degrees or something like that. This is not quite there. I'd have to move a little bit, but it's, you start with what's there. If you have an old one and it's a problem and you need to do the bevel first, then he has a technique where he has a stand next to his grinder and runs it along like this and gets that initial bevel. That's pretty scary. On the other hand, if you've got a $15 draw knife, maybe it's not so scary. I don't know. But that's how you do it. The real problem is finding an old one. It's got some good steel. This is kind of messed up, but when the back is trashed, it can take a lot of work. Well, it'll take a couple hours maybe to make that smooth, because you do need a smooth edge there for this thing to operate correctly. But we have them.
So when you're working with a chisel or a plane, how do you know when it's time to resharpen?
Well, it stops working, and frankly, most of us just start going like this, right? It grabs your skin, it feels sharp, and if it cuts well, then it's sharp. With plane blades especially, if you're cutting like that and you see a raised line like a hair, that means you've got a little teeny tiny nick, and it might almost be invisible to the eye, but you can see it in the finished product, especially if it's a finished planing and you're not going to do anymore, you're not going to sand it afterwards, then you certainly want to take some time and sharpen. And people that have been here and teaching, like Garrett Hack, tend to have a lot of planes, and they keep one for that final finish. They don't, even if they're just taking off thousandths, then they put it aside and they get out the special plane for that last little thing, and that blade is just sharp, sharp, sharp. There's some more information at the bottom of that page, and they should work as links. There are a couple of good books, Wood Central, and of course we didn't mention our friend here. This is wonderful for you older folks out there. It's got the magnifying and the bright light, and it really allows you to see an edge. You can also get a little magnifier, and Larry Wade recommends those for his sharpening classes for the carving. But this is a big help to me personally, to be able to see an edge.
Any other questions?
Want to have any more questions?
A lot of cleanup. Well, you're all welcome to come in on a Monday evening. I'm not here every Monday, but a lot of them. And if you want to bring in a particular plane or chisel or something, we can show you how, and you can do some of our own stuff for us and help us maintain. You come in here, and sometimes there are things like this one. And this is, these are the junky ones that we say, you know, use these for taking glue off. But we do expect you to actually wipe the glue off when you're done and not just stick the chisel over here. Okay. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Oh, happy to do it. That's
Very nice presentation.
well, I hope I answered some. I hope somebody comes in. A lot of it, you know, just say how hard. Come on in and we'll work on it. You know, with those, or how hard do you press? I forget the guy's name, but somebody. I was asking how hard do you hone like that? And I held my hands like this, and he just pushed down. I thought, oh, okay. But that's hard to do in a book or over the internet. So, no. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Well,
Thank you, everyone.
good night, everybody.
And we'll see you all next month. And if you have any ideas for a topic you'd like to see, be sure you send them to me, and we'll get a program put together.
Thank you.